Welcome back to another video. Today, delving into my own theory, which has to do, in a lot of cases, with 2024 and what's going on there. So my theory, and this is just me thinking out loud, Ron DeSantis is clearly trying to debate Gavin Newsom as if it's a great idea, but it kind of brings up the topic of what if Gavin Newsom does run for president in 2024? I think the safe thing would say that, you know what, actually he'll run after Biden. No. We're not nice. We're not playing nice. We're talking about the liberal American psycho, okay? We're talking about Patrick Bateman in the modern day, in the flesh, okay? We're talking about this guy from California going in there and saying, you know what, Joe, I kissed your ass for years, done, knife in, you're weak, you're out. The dementia a couple years ago wasn't apparent enough for Gavin, okay? He did not step in 2020 when he could. Instead, it was Andrew Cuomo hogging up all that attention back then. Now it's going to be this governor. This liberal governor is coming from the opposite coast. This is going to be somebody who will step in there, hated. He's the anti-hero. He'll come in. He'll play it. And guess what? What's better? Well, Kamala Harris. Oh, she might run if it's not Joe Biden. And we all know why Joe wouldn't run again. And you could say like, oh, well, he's done the paperwork. He's running for president. Yeah, but he could still step down. There's still plenty of time for that to happen. In fact, there's like several months. And so things are in flux. And so here's the thing. If Gavin Newsom were to come in now, he'd instantly mog anybody else who's running against Joe. For starters, you had Robert Kennedy, who wasn't polling above like 15% anyway. And he's already like a third party, so he's out of the way. So then basically there's nobody else running. Joe Manchin, if he runs, is going to be third party as well. Okay, so then what Democrat's going to run? Nobody irrelevant. Okay, great. So then if that's going to happen, then all of a sudden we're dealing with a society in which one person, and in this case, this one person is going to be the governor. This governor from California is going to come in with funding because the liberal elite will support him. He has fanfare along all the centrist Democrats, all the normative sort of Democrats, the Dianne Feinsteins, etc., Nancy Pelosi. With that being said, you have these groups of people, and you could say, well, they're going to support Kamala first. No, they're not. Kamala, first of all, is the least popular politician I can even think of. Worse than Ted Cruz, worse than AOC, worse than Rashida Tlaib, worse than Ilhan Omar. And the reason being is that she doesn't really appeal to anyone. Kamala is not only like a little bit on the extreme side of the party, but more so just an idiot, blubbering, no charisma, disingenuous, whatever. Whereas with Gavin Newsom, yeah, he's a faker, but he's actually charismatic and he's actually on one hand, you have like an underhanded Machiavellian bitch in Kamala, and then you have the Chad sociopath, American Psycho ripoff in Gavin. And so Gavin Newsom is a guy who will take the mantle of the Democratic Party and just snatch it from Joe, because the torch isn't going to be passed. I mean, the torch is going to be dropped, and we're just expecting Gavin to pick it up, okay? So it's not like Gavin's looking too opportunistic here if he were to just take the nomination now. And so that's why it seems a little bit more of an opening to do so. Plus, when Gavin Newsom wanted to debate Ron DeSantis, it's likely that, he was setting up for 2028. Maybe that's not even it. Maybe he's setting up for the closer term. In fact, you know what? That 2024 debate that's going to happen in a couple weeks from now against DeSantis, maybe that's for this year. In fact, think about it. There's a scenario in which, Joe Biden has a stroke. Okay, Kamala's president, super unpopular. Gavin Newsom goes and debates Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis gets destroyed by Gavin. Okay. And then let's say Donald Trump, on some off chance, ends up in jail right away and can't really run for president, or he has a stroke. Okay. Now we have a presumptive nominee in DeSantis who got destroyed by Gavin Newsom. Okay. If that's the case, then Gavin Newsom is going against an emasculated eunuch of a candidate, and he could easily win 2024 off of that alone. And obviously, Kamala's going to be super unpopular, so there's no way she runs, because then she'd get fucking destroyed in the primary for Democratic nomination, in which case then it's a free game, a free field for Gavin. And nobody else is going to try to go against him, because why would they? He has the California donor base. So if that's the case, then that opens up for Gavin. And even better than that, you've got the other case, which is that, okay, Nikki Haley maybe is the second runner-up against Trump. Okay, well, if that's the case, is Nikki Haley going to beat Gavin Newsom? I don't think so. So, I mean, at that point, Gavin's looking pretty good. And so I say this because I think it's a more interesting scenario than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is probably going to lose in 24, not only because of the fact that he's super unpopular. And you could even say as a cope, well, isn't the disapproval rating for Gavin Newsom at 49% in California, which is a very liberal state? Yeah, I mean, he is pretty unpopular, and that's fair enough. But I think a lot of the blame can be held at the federal government, and I think that's what he would do. Thus far, he's been sweeping it up for Joe Biden, saying like, nah, he's doing a good job. Yeah, the gas is expensive. Okay, whatever. Okay, but the thing is that he could just blame it on Joe. Like at the end of the day, when they're like, well, the economy sucks, this, you could just point out, well, the country sucks. It's not California, it's the rest of you people. And plus, if they say, well, you're the lab for liberal movements, basically, and this is actually true, there's a heuristic in politics, and these people will say in these back rooms that basically the Democratic Party is the national party is what California is in 5 years. And what I mean is like California's 5 years ahead of the liberal agenda. So as compared to the federal government, which actually checks out. And so you could say, okay, well, Gavin is really at the forefront of a lot of this liberal shit. Well, yeah, but again, the normal voter doesn't really understand that. So I think the normal voter would see like, oh, well, Joe Biden, Gavin, okay, these are very different people. Okay, if that's the case, then you're good. Plus, here's another dynamic, and this is just really some geek level stuff, but basically, Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom in their interaction has they really like each other. And the reason why is because they're both like kind of egomaniac, kind of like narcissist guys. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of like a fraternity they've got going on between the two of them. And so they haven't really attacked each other in earnest at all. And so what that means is that Gavin's kind of getting away with like not getting any shit from Trump, which is only going to open up his possibilities going forward to do anything he wants. And so it's a brilliant thing going on. And again, Joe Biden has no say as to who runs in 24. He's clearly not calling the shots. In fact, when you watch, on Twitter or anything, when you go and you see gaffes of Joe Biden as of recently, and he's been doing this for 2 years, where he's like, oh man, I shouldn't say this. They're gonna get mad at me. Who's they? You know who runs the country, right? And what I mean is that he's not in control of the levers of power, obviously. So there's other people calling the shots, and no, it's not Kamala, and no, it's not anybody that you're thinking of. Most likely, it's going to be, some more esoteric stuff going on that I cannot get into detail about. But basically, Joe Biden, rest assured, is not calling the shots. He cannot. If he says he's running for president, it's only because there's nothing else going on, okay? As soon as there's something else, if Gavin wants to come in, then he loses that torch. It's gone. It's gone. And he's not even holding it. He's just like, the torch is in his lap. It's going to fall off, okay? So we need to be careful. What's going on here is that we have a nominee who is a skeleton, who is basically just a placeholder. And the fact is that Gavin Newsom would destroy Joe Biden in a debate if it ever came to it, obviously. And secondly, if Joe Biden proceeds to duck the debates, if Gavin were to run, then again, Joe looks like a bitch, and it'll be just that much more of an open secret of like, okay, of course this guy's a vegetable. Of course he won't debate this guy in his 50s like Gavin, who's actually mentally there. And so Gavin is actually really well poised to run for president right now as a Democrat, and he has a good chance of winning. In fact, and people will say, well, again, he's the governor of a shitty state, whatever have you. He might do worse than Joe. But at the end of the day, at least Gavin Newsom would go to a debate. At least Gavin Newsom would campaign in person. At least Gavin Newsom would raise more money than Joe Biden, who's a vegetable. And so, you know what? Actually, I think Gavin Newsom would have a better chance at being president than does Joe Biden at this point. Because, as I said, if he were to actually bring up the point, if he were to actually belabor the point, he could actually become the presidential nominee for the Democrats. Because again, like I said, Joe Biden's not going to be there. And so at that point, Kamala is gone. All the competition is gone. He has all the cards. And they're all going to have to kiss his ring if he goes for it right now. If he waits, it's not going to be as good because, first of all, he'd be out of office at that point as governor of California for maybe like 2 years, which isn't crazy, but again, his relevance will go down. And so that's going to be a problem if his name ID is going to be lower than whoever's running for president as a Republican in 28. And so it's better if he just does it now, in my opinion, because the primary is going to be a lot easier, okay? And it is somewhat of like an unorthodox position to take where you're saying, okay, well, there's a clear incumbent president nominee going on. Why the hell would you challenge that guy right there in the middle of his 2 terms? But the fact is that Joe Biden has got to be the weakest president in all history, like not even kidding. Plus, he's at the weakest position. Plus, has the least amount of leverage. And so at that point, if the party leaders, and I don't even know who I'm referring to exactly, but if you have a half a dozen people in the Democratic Party that are saying, okay, like Joe, okay, we're taking you out to pasture. And you know what's also a nitpick? Here's another thing. So basically, the Hunter Biden stuff, it's being guarded, or the Democrats are really shielding Joe Biden's family from prosecution. And in a major way, it's very obvious that the Republicans, who are controlled opposition, obviously, are still going to go through with some half-assed measures against Hunter Biden for not only corruption, but also just like illegal gun possession. And like Hunter Biden's obviously a scumbag. But what's more important to point out is that the Democrats are really defending Joe Biden against the worst of it, obviously. But as soon as the narrative shifts, Joe Biden can get the Brutus treatment instantly. And what I mean is, basically, the media is defending Joe by saying, well, nah, I mean, this is his grown son. That's not the president. That's the kid. Don't worry about it. We're not going to prosecute Joe. But if Gavin Newsom brings up the argument and actually just publicly says, I'm going to run for president, fuck you, Joe. If he does that, then everybody, the powers at B will say, okay, well, are we going Team Gavin or Joe Biden? They're probably going to take Gavin Newsom over Joe. If you force that economy, it's going to go Gavin. Okay, well, if the establishment is pro Gavin at that point, then what'll happen is that you're going to go from a Congress that is investigating Hunter Biden, but with a slim majority, just barely controlled opposition, getting blockaded at every moment, getting molasses thrown at them by the Democrats and the delegation. But as soon as the establishment goes and knives out on Joe, then they could prosecute Hunter real quick. And that'll fucking kill Joe. And by the way, whatever happened to that whole, remember last year they raided Mar-a-Lago and they went through the documents and they were classified. You know who else had classified documents in his garage from what I could tell? It was Joe Biden. What happened in that case? That case isn't closed yet. They could, and the Democrats have this as leverage. The powers that be, the judicial systems, whatever have you, these people can really fuck over Joe Biden if he ever goes off the plantation or if they just want to replace him. At that point, he's the bitch of the establishment. And so if Gavin Newsom wants to become their new flesh puppet, then that'll be the case. So that's the thing. And so at that point, you're really talking about a situation in which there's a sword of Damocles going above the head of a guy who's blind to it even being there. And that's Joe Biden. He's not mentally there. Okay, so they could prosecute Joe, flip the narrative from, oh, well, Joe has nothing to do with Hunter, don't worry about it, to actually this is a huge issue. And you know damn well the media is super corrupt. They would totally jump on it. If it came down to it. So if the piranhas smell blood in the water, best believe they're going to pick whatever's left of his decaying skeletal presence politically. And so basically, Gavin has an easy way to become president, or at least the nominee for the Democrats, if he were to actually do what I tell him to in this case. And so that's my theory. And I personally think that above all, it seems to me as if the Republicans would be at a bigger jeopardy if they were to take him on right now versus Joe Biden. And it's only better for him to do it now compared to 2028. Here's my reason as to why he wouldn't do it. Okay, the rebuttal would be actually the counter argument being Gavin Newsom sees the economy. He sees how shitty everything is, how the Democrats have ran the country into the ground, and he's self-aware about that. And he could be a liberal at heart, but he understands that it's a bad look right now. Like, you could be a male model, but if you just shat your pants, you're not going to be walking around pretty girls because they're going to smell you. And that's the same thing. Okay, so you can be a Democrat governor and agree with what Joe Biden's doing, but understand that the people in general don't like Joe Biden's policies, and those are your policies in part and parcel. So if that's the case, then Gavin might strategically be thinking, well, I could be the nominee, but it's not a sure thing for starters. And secondly, if I do it now and I fail, then I can't run again because you're a loser. Okay, fine. So then I'll just wait in 2028 where it's an open field and just hope to God that I win then. And hopefully the Republicans would run the country into the ground after Joe Biden or something like that, which is probably not going to happen. In which case, Gavin's he's fucked. Okay, so here's what I'll say. If Gavin waits until 2028, he probably has like a 20% chance of becoming president. We'll give his odds in the primary where I don't know who would run in that case. And that's like in 5 years. So in 5 years, he has like a 50-50 chance of winning the primary because he's going to be out of the governorship for 2 years. Plus he's unpopular as a governor anyway. So that's going to be difficult. Then there's a less than 50% chance of him winning the presidency more than likely because incumbents tend to win. So then, okay, so you can wait, Gavin, and you'll have a 20% chance of being president, or you can take your 50-50 shot right now and do it then. But that's it. So that's my theory. Adios.